name's Lewis O'Brien. I've created this 5-minute guide series to property development contracts to help those who want to develop property, be it a small renovation or a large unit development, to avoid common mistakes and do it better. I believe that the ideas we'll offer you here will help you avoid a nasty car crash and help you maximize the profits from your next development. For those developers that wish to increase the scale and scope of their property development activities, Lewis O'Brien and Associates does have the ultimate guide to joint ventures, but more on this later. As you may realize, joint ventures and how to make them work in a property development context is a huge topic that I could spend hours talking about. In the 5 minutes that we have allocated in this video, I want to cover the most common question that people ask me about joint ventures and that they struggle with. How do we allocate profits between the joint venture parties? To start with, let's look at how a beginner property developer might split the profits of a property development joint venture. Let me introduce firstly the sort of parties that you might have. Now, each joint venture may be a little different, but in each joint venture you're going to see someone providing basically cash or equity, someone providing borrowing capacity, someone providing skill, so project management style, building sort of architectural type skills, and finally there's the person who establishes, administers and organizes the joint venture. Now, in relation to this project, to make it a little more concrete, we're going to assume that there's a surplus on the development of $450,000. I'm going to put on screen now the rough sort of profit distributions that I generally see from novice property developers. That is, when I've done surveys at some of the presentations I've given, these are the sorts of results we see. Having set some sort of baseline, let's now look at how you might allocate profits a little more scientifically. To do that, I want to introduce the concept of true profit, which I believe is what's left after we've paid for all the contributions of the joint venturers, and obviously all the other costs and expenses of the property development as well. But in this case, true profit is what's left after each of the venturers have been paid a market rate for their contribution to the joint venture. If we deduct all these contributions from the surplus on the development, we're left with true profit. And I think then allocating or dividing that up becomes a bit simpler. Okay, so let's start thinking about the value of the contributions of the four parties to our notional joint venture. Firstly, we're going to look at the person providing the equity or the cash. Let's assume that an interest rate of 15% is reasonable, an 18-month duration, and $750,000 of funds provided. You might get to $170,000 value for that contribution. Valuing the contribution of the person providing the serviceability is always a little tricky. On one hand, they're not actually providing anything concrete, but they are signing personal guarantees and they are facilitating the raising of the mortgage debt. I start with a sort of an estimate of about 2% effectively as a guarantee fee. In this case, assuming $1.25 million worth of debt and a 18-month project period, you might come to a $40,000 figure as being an appropriate value for the contribution. Thirdly, we need to pay for the skills involved in managing the build and otherwise dealing with the technical aspects. It's not uncommon to pay an architect 10% of the build cost as a fee, so it may be that $80,000 being 10% of an $800,000 build cost is appropriate. Finally, we need to work out an appropriate return to the person who's doing the organising and setting up the joint venture. If we assume 800 hours and a notional salary of $50 per hour, we come up with $40,000 worth for this contribution. Okay then, now that we've put a value on the contributions, we can try and work out what the true profit is and how to allocate it. So we had a surplus on the development of $450,000. We've allocated $330,000 to venturer contributions, which leaves $120,000 of true profit to be allocated between the venturers. How this is allocated will depend very much on the nature of the individuals, the joint venture and the other circumstances. However, if I was the organizer who'd put together this joint venture, I would be trying to keep as much of that $120,000 as possible for myself. So if we assume the organizer can actually retain most of this true profit, this is what the profit split will ultimately look like. Notice that instead of receiving 20% or $90,000 worth of profits, the organizer is now receiving $160,000, which is a substantial step up. To round out this video, I just wanted to make the obvious point that we have raised in 5 simple steps some important issues about how you might go about more scientifically dividing the surplus in a property development joint venture. This is not intended to be a comprehensive list. It certainly doesn't take into account all of the factors, imperatives, and other issues that may arise in the course of a negotiation. As always, good professional advice is invaluable. I hope you've enjoyed this short video and got some value and insight out of it. If you are serious about pursuing property development using joint ventures, I encourage you to purchase a copy of the Advanced Property Joint Ventures Guide, prepared by Lewis O'Brien and incorporating more than 20 years worth of tips, techniques, and advice to help you make sure that your first or next joint venture is as successful and as profitable as it possibly can be. Further details are available at lewisobrien.com.au. Otherwise, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the newsletter available at our website. Lewis O'Brien and Associates has been helping property developers to make their projects more profitable for more than 20 years. We look forward to helping you make your next project smoother, faster, and more profitable.